morning, everyone. A very good morning. Shall we start the session? There were some technical issues. That's why we have not started at the 4, we can say. So let's start with the yesterday session. What we have covered. We have covered with this diagram, client server. We have covered with this browser, web server, local file system, whatever the system that we have, whatever the data we have. So that is used for making the web pages, that is used for making the web server. So there is a browser, then there is a request, then there is a document, web server, and there is a local file system that is used between a web application and the web server for the website. And for this purpose of this group, so we have used web application, that is a website, where user input, navigation through the site, and data entry also affects the state of the business. So whatever the state we are using, whatever the data we are using, that is used with the state of the business, beyond of course, access the logs and hits the counter. And in a sense, in usage, web server, the web application also uses a website as a front end to a business application. So whatsoever the front end tool that is also used with the business application, that is also used as a part of the website. Next is the HTTP. We have discussed about the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a protocol that is used or that it shows or specifies how a browser should format and send the request to a web server. So whatever the format, whatever the data we have, that is used to format and send a request. And in this form, the client also uses, or client server also uses or sends a document request containing a lines of character that is terminated by a CR or LS. So there are two parts, one is a carriage return, one is a line field. And a well-behaved server will not require the carriage return character. So whatever the data we have, whatever the format we have, that is not returned by the carriage return. So this request consists of the word get, a space, and the location of the document related to the root of the web server file system. So whatever the file system, whatever the data we are using up, that is used for the web server file system that contains, so whenever a web server is configured, whenever a website is configured, it is usually set up to use a particular directory on the host machine. That is a directory that is used on the host machine that specifies how it is used, or what is the main root directory that specifies with the website. And documents are also found up or also found relative in this directory. So that is used, that is found up, that is also available in this directory. Next is the document identification. So a full identifier for referencing and obtaining the document is known as a URL, that is a Uniform Resource Locator. It identifies a protocol, that is the HTTP, host machine name, optional port number, and a document name location. So this is used with the host number, this is used with the HTTP, this is used with the optional port number, and also used with the URL. That is a single word with no white spaces, and any further found or words found on the request line are also either ignored or treated according to the full specification or the full HTTP specification. And URL is a way to specify an object, resource, or a network. It is like the network equivalent for specifying a file name on a file system. So whatsoever the file name, whatsoever the data we are using now, that is disclosed on the file name of the file server or the web server. That can be used to request many types of objects with different protocols. In addition to this, there is the HTTP request, HTTP file that is also used with the common internet protocols such as news groups, such as FTP, Gopher, and file. And each protocol is also specific to the type of information or resource it represents. And whenever HTTP is specified, the object is known as the web page. And this URL requests a web page from a host consisting of identified by the URL or the website that is given over here. So it specifies whatsoever the request it is using up, and the document name that is given with the HTML extension that is located in the directory that is also located on the web server. And the more explicit reference to this page could include the page number, and by default the page number is given as a 80, that is usually consists of the HTTP request. There is a HTTP, then there is a URL 80 that is specified as the default port number, then switch WD, then k43.html. So that is used with the HTML file. So, and it is also possible, or it is also we can say the configure possible to configure the web server to listen to the port number 80 other than to create a private website, because when we create an additional port, it is also used for the web configuration. This allows webmasters, this allows responsible for the web server and the site to remotely manage a web server configuration with just a browser. So whatever the browser problem, whatever the we can say the user problem that is used for the configuration tool, and this is one of the example, configuration tool example is a small web application. Next is a domain name. What is a domain name? That is simply the textual name used to look up numeric internet address. So numeric internet address is represented by the domain name, and IP address system is a use that is today you are using in the IP address, that is the internet protocol address. And whenever a client requests a URL, so the request must be made directly to the host computer. This means that the host name identified in the URL must be resolved into a numeric IP address. So whatever the data, whatever the URL we are using up, so that is used to make the host machine, that is used to make identifying in the URL. Now, when we convert the domain name into the URL, that is known as a DNS, that is the domain name server. And it is a network computer that the client has access to, and what has known, or this is known as the IP address. There are two parts in this. One is the DNS, one is the IP address. So whenever we convert the IP address into the domain name, that is used, that it has to make the known IP address. And the network infrastructure software on the client also shows how to replace the IP address from a DNS for a given domain name. And whatsoever the host name, that is made up of the two distinct parts, and the rightmost dot. So this is the dot, that is the rightmost dot. This is the dot that specifies the host name from its top level domain, that is the TLD, in this case .com. That means it is a commercial website, it is a commercial data. It is a subdomain, and the term domain name also refers to the combination of the top level domain and a subdomain. In this case, the domain is this one, and it is a name I own. And as owner of the domain name, I am also responsible for ensuring that the IP address is also associated with the domain. I am reserving a domain name and not using it to a host as a web server or the website. It is also referred as a parking, that is a domain name, with the expectation that the real host will be using up will also soon respond meaningfully to this domain name. So whatsoever the data that is given up, that is used with this domain name. And when I registered that domain name, I used one of the official registrars that dedicated the authority to assign domain name, to assign the registrar. In order to reserve a domain, in order to fill a domain, I had to supply the IP address of the two domain servers or name servers. That would also act as an authoritative source for translating the domain name into a valid IP address. So this IP address, that is a valid, that is a valid domain name that translates the domain name into the valid IP address. And it is on this server that I have a right to adjust as necessary as the IP address contains that I want associated with the domain name or its multi-level variation. So whatsoever the data, whatsoever the domain that we are using up, so that is created or used to create the records in the DNS to equate this equation to the specific IP address of any host computer. And when we talk about the www and the test parts, that are the third level domain, and their usage is up to the discretion of the discretion of the host owner. The usage is given to the discretion. Their conversion or convention is also used for the HTML website, FTP for the FTP servers, and NTP for the Usenet news server, and so on. Although this condition should not be confused with the protocol specification part of a URL that is discussed with the protocol. And a third level domain name also serves only as a convenience to the host name, and also not a part of the domain name ownership process, nor do they impact type of the protocol that are used. Any host name that have a domain, any host name that have a HTTP request for a resource to a server that is a client typically includes a URL that was used to resolve the IP address. Now, this resolving, whenever we say the resolving, that also used to convert the IP address into the domain name and IP address, or domain name into the IP address. This is why, or how many ISPs then can be used for converting, for making the IP address possible. That is used with the internet service provider that can also handle various capability to the customer, which can be shared on the shared machines. And I've also set up my server to point to a portal application when the request is going on, when the request is carried on, to simple test HTML website for this. And the two types of the top level domain that will be used are the generic and the country specific. Generic is related to the internet infrastructure .com.edu .net, and these are the various domain specific. Now there are two parts of this IP address that is connected with this one, and the list of the top level domain that is also specific that were expanded. However, .com, .edu, .net and .org that also continues to the one that most of us recognize. And each domain is also intended for a particular type of this usage. For example, .com domains are used for the commercial businesses, .net for the internet service providers, ORG for the non-profit organization, that is the ORG. EDU, educational institutions. And the country level domain that is used with the .ok, UK, .co, .me, .org, .uk, .uk, ltd.uk that is also connected with the connected users. It is not until the third level domain that is specified with the individual organization that can claim otherwise, or that can claim the ownership. So this TLD is also used or managed by a single authority that is given with the authority that is used with the internet connection. And this top level domain is also used with the UK, PLC, and these are maintained by the Internet Corporation for assigned names and the numbers, that is the ICANN, with the distribution of the internet numbers managed by the Internet Assigned Number Authority, that is IANA. And in the vast majority of the situations, you will work through an official registrar, that is a company responsible for selling the domain, that is an ISP, rather than the work that is directly used with these organizations, these parts. So whatever the data we are using up, whatever the file we are using up, that is used for assigning the part, that is used for including the parts. Next is the resource identifiers, that is a URL. That is the main we can see the topic. So what is a URL? And what is the difference between the URL and the URI? URL is Uniform Resource Locator. URI is Uniform Resource Identifier. That identifies the resource, that identifies the uniform resources. That specific is used with the superclass to URL and URN, where it is an identifier of a resource on the internet, nothing more. And this URL is a name that includes an access specification, access modifier by which we can use, how it is used, how it is remain globally unique and persistent even when the resource ceases to exist. So whatever the resource data, whatever the file we are using, that becomes unavailable with the data, that becomes unavailable with the file. And for all the practical purposes, we are the application developers that are mostly interested in the unavailability part that makes usage. And for all practical purposes, that I use an identifier that is used to connect the web pages to form a system. Then next is the fault tolerance. So an important design goal of our system is that they must be, or that they can be robust and fault tolerant. Why? Because the robust means whatever the input we have given up, whatever the data we have given up, that makes the output, that gives the output. Does not make sure that we cannot expect the output. We expect the output, but that is not up to the mark, we can say. And the fault tolerant. And in the first web system at the time, web systems or web computer, documents, computer, and the network configuration was often subject to change. This means that it was possible for the web pages to contain a link to make a link to the document or the host computers to that no longer exist, that no longer occupy. And it's also even possible for the HTML specification itself to change by adding the elements or the tags. Whatsoever the data, whatsoever the web pages we are considering, that is used to make the element, that is used to make the tags. And the browsers and the web servers of the system have to deal carefully with these conditions. And this desired for a high degree of tolerance for program led in part of decision to use a connectionless protocol, such as the HTTP, as a principal protocol for managing the document request. That is also considered as the connectionless protocol. As soon as some request is made fulfilled, the connection between the client is terminated. So it is the connectionless protocol or the oriented protocol. So next, when we talk about the fault tolerance that is used with the issue that is used with the current, so there is the HTTP protocol, that is the principal protocol for the new request. And this is also a connectionless protocol. That means there is no connection and data connection is required for this. So this connectionless protocol is also considered as soon as the request is made and fulfilled. So this connection between the client and the service is also terminated. And connection is broken by the server and the whole document has been transferred. The client has avoided the transfer by breaking the connection before transfer completes, in which case whatever the server does not record any error condition. And the server does not have to store or need to store the information about the request after this connection, and it enables the host and the client to act more independently and is more resistant to the very network outages. So whatever the outages, whatever criteria we have, that is used with outages, that is used with the connection with the request after the disconnection. And the HTTP also runs over the TCP, that is the transmission network protocol, but could run over any connection-oriented service. And this is the lower level network protocol used by the internet and many company networks that enables the computers to make connection and to let go with exchange details with another system. That usually combined with IP, that is the Internet Protocol, that is the implementation of the OSI, often in the full system interconnection model for the network communication. And this is also used with the HTTP, that is a secure socket layer, and that is related to the HTTP, but it is encrypted to help secure the communications. And this is used on the internet for handling sensitive data such as personal and financial information. So whatsoever the data, whatsoever the discussion that is used with security and encryption, that is also one of the main discussed part of the encryption as we have covered, as we are going to cover in the section number 5 security. This we can use, this we can turn with the SSL secure socket layer that is related to the HTTP and has to help secure for communication. This is used for the internet for handling sensitive data, sensitive information such as the personal and the financial information. And browser, in addition to establishing the network connection and protocol for the document interchanges, has to render the document on the display, and where the TCP IP and the HTTP address is add-on. But this is used with the HTML, this is used with the content of visualizing the web page, that is also used with the HTML. And there are two parts, one is the HTML, one is the HTML.